It's July 2012. A Federation inspector, Michel Gauvreau, is doing what he always does. Clipboard, safety vest, a little metal tapping rod that doubles as a ladder hook, routine inventory for the International Strategic Reserve. It's a routine checkup in Quebec's maple syrup vault. Every barrel is supposed to hold about 600 pounds when full. He checks each barrel one by one, tapping on each. Eventually, one of the barrels echoes, then another one echoes. Michel becomes skeptical, and he pries open the lid. It's hollow inside the barrels. Maybe they forgot to fill this barrel with maple syrup. Just to be sure, he pries open another barrel. It's empty inside. Unbeknownst to Michel, Richard Valliere had stolen over 3,000 tons of maple syrup, valued at 18.7 million Canadian dollars. It made this heist the largest theft in Canadian history.
Unseen Vision.
It's in the middle of winter in Quebec, 2011, and somewhere down one of those roads sits a warehouse that looks like any other. The property is owned by Quebec's maple syrup producers. But why would anyone want maple syrup? A barrel of maple syrup is actually 10 to 18 times more expensive than a barrel of crude oil. Valued at $1,200 USD per barrel, it's no wonder that someone would steal maple syrup. Over the months, 3,000 metric tons of maple syrup were quietly siphoned away. No one noticed until about $18.7 million worth of maple syrup was stolen. You see, the Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Producers doesn't just make syrup, it controls it. It sets quotas, stabilizes prices, and decides how much syrup gets to move when. Where does the extra go? Into the International Strategic Reserve. Here's what it looks like. Vast rooms of white steel barrels stacked in places like Saint-Louis-de-Blandford. Because of its size, it's only inspected once a year. But Richard Valliere is already aware of this. Richard knew those rooms too, the regulatory ones, hearings, files, fines. In 2007, he was already on the wrong side of paperwork. Meanwhile, small producers tap trees, fill barrels, and get told they made too much. Payment lags, but bills do not. That's the ecosystem Richard swims in. Try to sell off-board, you'll meet a chain, a padlock, a citation. So Richard finds a way to sell his maple syrup on the black market, ultimately leading to being fined $1.8 million in 2007. He also had his house seized. And in the next couple of years, he plotted for revenge. In 2011, the pieces click. Avik Karan has access. His spouse co-owns space in the same building where the reserve is stacked at Saint-Louis-de-Blandford. That's the door. He becomes an inside man for the entire heist operation. Sébastien Jutras becomes the driver, and Etienne Saint-Pierre would later sell the stolen maple syrup to importers all over the world. Richard Valliere, the mastermind of the entire heist, plans everything. Richard is the map. He knows who will buy quietly, where to route a shipment so it looks ordinary, how to turn something huge into a series of small, boring moves. They start by renting warehouses and truck depots to store the stolen syrup. Due to low security, Sébastien Jutras was able to quietly transfer all of the maple syrup in a truck. Off-site, at a sugar shack, they unload the truck, and the syrup moves through a rubber hose into clean, unmarked containers. Back at the Federation's barrels, some were refilled with water. Some are left empty once they realize nobody is weighing them between annual counts. New tamper seals make them look right. After months of theft, this became a routine. The contents of 9,571 barrels have flowed out of the room. Now that the team has stolen a lot of maple syrup, it's time to sell. Selling is a craft. Lucky for them, Richard is an expert. First, he breaks the stock into small, unremarkable loads. Then, he sends some east to Kedgewick, New Brunswick, to Etienne Saint-Pierre, and some south into Vermont. Etienne acts as an outlet for the stolen maple syrup, while Vallières and others smuggled syrup out of the Federation's warehouse. Saint-Pierre bought it and moved it into the market. According to Wikipedia, the Great Maple Syrup Heist would become the most valuable in Canadian history, with a staggering $18.7 million worth of maple syrup stolen. July 2012. It's time for an annual count inside the International Strategic Reserve. Inspectors gather to check each maple syrup barrel. One of the inspectors, Michel Gauvreau, climbs the stacks for the annual count. Normally, a full barrel should feel like an anchor, but one of the barrels feels awfully light. He taps the metal lid and it sounds hollow. Curiosity strikes and he pries open the lid. His intuition was right, it's empty. After further investigation, they concluded that it was a robbery and not a mistake. But why didn't anyone catch it sooner? Because of low security and only annual boxes in the checklist, nobody would weigh anything that is sealed. Every time they check another barrel, it's either water or air. The room turns from pantry to crime scene. Police arrive at the warehouses. So does the Sûreté du Québec, RCMP, and even U.S. agencies. Interviews, warrants. At SK Export in Kedgwick, thousands of barrels of stolen maple syrup are stacked on pallets. Back at HQ, the case looks like a narcotics board. Faces, phone numbers, routes, invoices, suspects, and a lot of red strings. And just like a narcotics case, you find the cash and the burner phones tucked inside clever spaces, a false bottom that holds its own secret. Everyone is quickly detained, and the courts start writing numbers onto the criminals. Richard Vallières, 8 years, and a $9.4 million bill not for his profit, but for the value of what moved through his hands and can't be returned. 10 years to pay, or 6 more inside. Etienne Saint-Pierre, ordered to 2 years less a day, probation, and a heavy fine. Avec Caron, sentenced to 5 years and a large penalty. Sébastien Jutra, only 8 months of prison. In the end, Richard had motives. Profit, yes, but also payback. In fact, after the heist, he stated, "I wanted revenge." Most of the stolen maple syrup was never found. Once it's mixed, bottled, and shipped, it disappears into daily life. A family pours maple syrup. News murmurs about a heist. Nobody at that table can taste what part was stolen. The Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Producers survives. They start implementing new security measures, security cameras, lasers, and keypads. Richard Vallières managed to revolutionize the Federation's security measures. He didn't stage a spectacle. He staged a system, slow, patient, precise. He found the best way for revenge and executed it almost perfectly. That's the shape of this crime. That's the echo it leaves. And finally, Richard Vallières got his revenge, changed the Federation's security forever, and created his legacy. But at what cost? Remember, he had to sacrifice 8 years in prison and pay $9.4 million. So was it really worth it?